Perfect. So hi everyone, welcome again. So today we'll be continuing for SOC expert at the point where we left. So the next topic which we are going to discuss is all about your SOC workflow, right? Your SOC workflow. So in SOC workflow, you can see we'll be including our we have different phases, you can say, or steps basically of your SOC workflow. The very first one is your collect. Okay, you can say collect or collection. So basically, your SOC workflow it includes all these activities, you can say, in short, right? So it has collection. So what do you mean by collection basically if I talk about?
Log collection.
Yeah, Vijendra, perfect. Log collection will be there. And again, since we have started the session, I would request all of you to, use the chat option and not to use the mic option, right? All right, perfect. Collecting logs, data logs, that's perfectly right. The correct answer for that. So we can say our security logs, they are collected and they are forwarded to whom? To your SIM. Exactly. They are forwarded to your SIM. So your logs, they are collected from various devices on the network, right? And then they are forwarded to your SIM, right? So we can write collection of logs for that. Then it gives a, the logs to the SIM basically. It will be forwarding it to the SIM. So in the next activity of your SOC is what? It is your ingest. So what do you understand by ingest, guys? Data sources to some via forwarders, good one, pulling and pushing. That's a good one, right? Consumption of logs. So see, in SIM solution, as I told you before, we do what? We do some correlation, right? And all those anomalies, activity detection, isn't it? Okay, Anil Kaveri, what is logs? Okay, every activity which has been done by you, which through which we can make sure that okay, it is done by you, and I can get back to you that okay, any like for example, if you are attending this meeting, if you are writing these chats, so these chats are also creating some logs. Okay, so with the logs, it is kind of a you can say accountability kind of a thing that later Anil Kaveri cannot deny that he did not write a message to Sayam on this chat box of GoToMeeting. So with the log, it is kind of a proof you can say. So every activity which is been there, you know, so it will be creating a log of it. You can say kind of a history, right? Exactly, Ashok. I use the activity history first. So ingest, I was just saying, getting back to this, I was talking about ingestion, right? So as I told you, in SIM solution, what do? We do some correlation, right? Remember correlation, guys? Where we wrote a entire code like error, login, failure, and all that part. So to write those correlation, those correlation will be applied to your logs only, right? Which have been collected. So first of all, those logs has to be feed to your SIM solutions. Make sense? Only then we can do the further activities in your SIM solution, correct? So first those logs has to be fed into your SIM solutions. So SIM will be ingesting your log datas, those thread information, your IOCs, your entire asset inventory, so that we can do some correlation and we can detect some anomalous activities over there. Clear everyone? So we collect logs and then we send them to the or we feed it to the SIM solutions, right? Yes. So yes, exactly. Like we have one of them also mentioned this pulling and pushing kind of a thing in short, right? So for example, if you talk about Splunk forwarders, we have some forwarders. What do? They'll be talking about in terms of agent. So if I want some logs from my system, I'll be installing those, forwards into the agent of a system, and that will be sending those logs to my SIM tool, which is the Splunk, right? So it will be feeding those logs to my SIM solution, right? Then we have validate. So guys, what do you mean by validate? Exactly, Raksh. Yes, it pulls log from data source and forward to the SIM, right? So that will be done by your agents, which I just talked about, those forwarders. Then we have validations, guys. What do you mean by validations? Yes, yes, exactly. That's what I'm saying, admin. Logs are, obviously, like, logs are collected and they are forwarded to your SIM only. That's a normal process. Only that is the way your SIM will be getting those logs, right? Either way, you can also upload a, you can say, file. That is also one way. But when you want to do the monitoring, and when you want the logs from different data sources, obviously you have to, send those logs to the SIM solution. So ingesting is like feeding, Harsh. In short form, ingesting means feeding those logs to your SIM solution or SIM tools. Jawar Abubakar, yes. Correlation is that. Rakshu, yeah, okay. Okay, Jagdish, no problem. So yeah, validations, you can say the SOC analysts, they'll be identifying those IOCs, those tri-edge alerts, right? And they'll be validating whether it is an incident or not, right? Reshma, those forwarders are used basically. The Splunk forward, if you write words Splunk forwarder, you will get an idea about it. Okay, Mohammed Asim Ali, I will just repeat. Validation means your SOC analyst, they'll be identifying the indicator of compromise and the triage alerts, and then they will be validating. In short, they'll be validating whether it is an incident or not. Okay. Then we have reporting, guys. What do you mean by reporting? Hmm. Okay, Vignesh Ashok gave the answer. Logs are stored in centralized data sources, which were collected from various devices. Perfect. I missed that question. Okay, reporting. So all those validated incidents, remember, then they are submitted to your, you can say, uh, we can say incident response team, right? Doesn't it? So those validated incidents, they are submitted to your, you can say, incident response team eventually, if it's an incident, right? And how they are done? Anyone knows about it? How do we submit those, incidents? Like L1 is going to give it to L2, L2 to L3 or incident response team. How do we do that? Through which system? Have you ever experienced that? Okay, whenever you are calling a customer care, right? When you're talking to that customer care person, and when he is not able to resolve your problem, like when he sees that, okay, this is an actual problem which he cannot resolve, so what does he do? He tells you that, okay, I'll be raising a ticket, right? So that we can resolve your issue as soon as possible. Ever seen that? Ever got a message that which tells that, sir, ma'am, we have raised your ticket for this particular issue and all that part in an e-commerce website, for example, or any or like that. Ever seen raising a ticket, right? Exactly. So yeah, you can say, like, invalidate in reporting, those validated incidents are submitted to your incident response team through a ticketing system. Yeah, Faisal, perfect. Yeah. So yeah, different tools are there. Exactly, ticketing system tools are there. Exactly. Service now, yeah, good one. Now, then we go to your response. Jira Service now, yes, absolutely. Then we have response. So what will happen in response? Analysis, like remediation. Yeah, we can say that. Good one. So you can say in a response, the SOC team they'll be reviewing the incident and they'll be performing those incident response activities, right? Though we'll be discussing it later, like just to give an idea, in incident response team, what do we have? Like they have few you can say steps. Like first is your preparation, identification, containment, eradication after that, and you can say recovery. The last one will be your lesson learned, right? So all once you validate the incident, your incident response team will be taking care of that incident with the following steps: preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, lesson learned. Make sense? We'll talk about it later, but this is the steps just to give an idea, a heads up. Okay. Then the last one is a document. So at last, incident they are documented for business audit purpose at the end, right? And they'll be just checking what can be, made properly and how we can do, the better things. Correct. Okay. That was regarding your SOC workflow. Okay. Then we talk about the components of SOC as I was mentioning, last session as well. Three components of SOC are your people, process, and technology, right? So your SOC, it requires the corporation, you can say cooperation and communication among your people. People can be whom? Like your analysts, your operators, your administrators, your engineers, right, etc., right? Who will be monitoring and analyzing the organization's IT infrastructure. Correct. And it will be using the combination of your processes, procedures, and your technology. Right. So skilled people who define processes, they should have a proper knowledge of intelligence technologies out there. Right. So uh like if we talk about people, right? So people, they are specialized individuals, we can define in that way, who are working at different level of SOCs or SOC, right? So the ones or the people who are working in a SOC, I would say they should have a technical knowledge, and they should have a, you can say, wide range of capabilities, and uh, good knowledge about the tools, for which they are working for, right? And they should be able to monitor and analyze the large amount of data, or you can say that in information that can be helpful or that can be used for further investigation as well, right? Because the investigation we also involve, like later, like if it's a huge case, your data forensic team will also be involved, and eventually they'll be also monitoring and analyzing those large amount of data, or you can say logs, isn't it? Correct. Right. So obviously, I would say, like, your people, if you talk about, they should have, or they should possess, you can say, the necessary training. And if you have a certification, that will be an add-on advantage, right? Which will be required to fulfill their respective roles and their responsibilities over there, right? So you have seen, like, many organizations, if you talk about, they have L1, your SOC analyst, L2 SOC analyst, L3 is also there. You can say you directly also go for incident responder. Okay. And then they report your SOC manager, right? And do you know who they all report to? Exactly, Satrajit. Yeah, Vignesh, correct. They all report eventually to your CISO. And CISO stands for Chief Information Security Officer. Good one, right? Always remember that, guys. It can be, like, kind of an interview question as well. Okay. So yeah, since we are talking about SOC analysts only, right? So if we talk about SOC analyst, okay, your security operation analyst or your SOC analyst or your security analyst, different names are there. They play, you can say, important role in a SOC. So your SOC analyst does what? He will be first of all doing what? He will be, or he or she will be doing what? Monitor and triage thousands of alerts and events from various sources, right? And then they'll be doing what? They'll be performing initial analysis on alerts and those events, and then they'll be validating and prioritizing the most important ones, right? And after that, you can say, you know, Rahul, they are the one those who are managing that same, isn't it? So they determine the alerts for which the escalation to the incident response team is needed for further in-depth analysis and remediations over there, right? So they determine the alerts for which the escalation to the incident response team is needed for further in-depth analysis and remediation of that particular incidents which has been validated by your SOC analyst, right? Exactly, Akshay. So if you talk about L1, just just tell me what do you understand by the difference between L1 and L2 SOC analyst. First and second level of SOC analyst, yes. So what is the difference? Like, what is their job? Just asking that. Their job roles and responsibilities, in short. Raising the tickets to monitor. Okay, great. L2 train L1 for investigation use case, monitoring data alerts, continue monitoring, detecting, preventing, and responding to threats. Raising tickets for validated incident, good one. Also, and while the detailed analysis and suggestions of containment or remediation plan can be searched by L2, good one. Those who do initial level of analysis, perfect. Or says okay, we'll discuss at the end for this one. Okay, you can just raise this query at the end again. No worries. Shake, not exactly, but still, like they have some commons working. So yeah, you can see your SOC analyst level one. Your level one security analyst. Uh, those who are what? They are the individuals. Those who are responsible for performing day-to-day security-related operations, right? So whosoever it is, like he or she will execute those tasks that are mentioned in the process in a repetitive manner, right? Uh, you know, they'll be also analyzing the SOC situation awareness, and they'll be monitoring the various automated device for detecting security incident. So, like if you talk about the responsibilities, they're responsible for collecting and monitoring security events from different log sources, like firewalls, network devices, web proxies, antivirus system, different device log sources basically. And then they perform the initial investigation of those security events, and then they escalate them to the next level if required, right? So, like if you have any contact with your, if you have SOC friends or those who have already seen, like if you talk about L1s in their dashboard, they see alerts generated over here on the left hand side, right, on the compliance base, or like alerts like they got an IP from who's trying to access from different geographical reasons, right? So they will be investigating those IPs. They can say, can you they'll be going to an online tools, right? For example, that IP wide, virus total, different online platforms are there. So when they go to those online tools, they'll be checking out whether this IP which they have, the IP they have got, whether this IP has an history over there or not, any malicious history or not, right? So when they find out, okay, if in case this IP is listed some malicious history, they'll be doing what? They'll be raising the ticket, and they'll be raising the ticket to whom? To your L2. IP wide, exactly, Raksha. That's what I said. Virus total and IP wide. Anup, yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So they take the help of this tool in order to do those analysis. Okay. Karthik, for sure. As I mentioned, we have, like, I'll be providing my LinkedIn link, and for that you can always feel free to reach out to me over there. Shake, not exactly, not like that, but since it is a, you can say, uh 24/7 job, so it's pretty much important to do it immediately, because if you do some late activities, if you're not performing on time, that can really be dangerous, isn't it? So it's kind of a you know priority based task. Vijendra, not exactly. The online tools, they list out the entire history or those IPs. So it's not like that. So any malicious contact with different domains, they will be listed out over there. MS Toolbox, yeah, definitely many more are there. Actually, if you want the list, I can give you the entire list of that. Yes, Anup Das, you can say definitely. Okay, they maintain the email address and distribution list. You can say, and they answer the SOC phone lines and updates required documentation, right? And then they perform security research, gather information, as I mentioned, about identified threats and vulnerabilities, right? So these will be, they'll be, you can say, in short, documenting the initial investigation results, and then they forward to a L2 level 2 analyst for final investigation. Sheikh, these are the different terms, different organization basically. Okay, so in short, L1, they will be monitoring security vulnerabilities to detect it's an incident or not, and they'll be reporting to your L2. Then L2, what your SOC analyst level 2 will do. Anubdas, automated ones, they are obviously the having good hand. I won't deny with that. Reports threat hunting, respond to any intrusion, good one. So yeah, automated tools will be there definitely. Yeah, they'll be collecting and documenting data related to the suspicious activities, right? And they'll be forwarding it to the next level of investigation, like to your incident responder, so on. Exactly, right? Correct. So when alert analyst, or you can say these people, they identify that they are also known as the alert analyst. Okay. So when they identify that security issues have been occurred, so he or she will forward them to your incident response team. Okay. So they will also work like a team member and also communicate with outside stakeholders as well. And yes. Okay. So your alert analyst, or you can say SOC analyst level 2, they prioritize those security alerts. They keep the track on all alerts and the tickets which have been raised, right? They'll be examining them, right? And if there is any false positive, they'll be closing those false positive first of all, right? Do you know, guys, what is false positive? Wrong alert. Okay. Which is not suspicious, wrongly detected, it is not true attack. Okay. These things, again, we'll discuss at the end. Because I'll be just telling you what happens, just to give you a flow. Okay. Basically, that is, you know, okay, false negative, dangerous one. Exactly. Totally agree with that. It's kind of a nightmare, isn't it? Instant complete review, after then we mark false positive. Exactly, Kumar, good one. COVID test. Anup Das famous these days due to COVID test false positive. Very good example for that. Alert which is perceived comes to be one of future of a business need. Okay, incident complete reviews and we are marked as false positive. Interesting. Okay. There are different types of, these triage alerts. Do you know that? Three or more there, if you know about it. Exactly. So this comes under the category of alert triaging and analysis of that. So uh, let's suppose, let me just remove these things. Exactly. Good one, guys. Good one. So these alerts, triage alerts are of different types. If I say, like, I will just put up two conditions over here. One is that I will do it in respect to your attacks and your alerts. We'll do it in respect to your attacks and your alerts. Okay. So let me create two columns: attack and alert. So let's suppose those four conditions are like this: true positive, true negative, false positive, false negative. Okay. So if I say, guys, if I say that there is an attack, sorry, if I say there was an alert generated, an alert says that there is an attack. If your alert says that there is an attack, it gives you positive, right? That okay, there was an attack. And when you checked in reality also there was an attack. Like, when you confirm that okay, in reality there is an attack, so it tells you it is what? What kind of a triage alert? Not escalated. I'm just asking among these four, which one is the type? True positive, right? Because alert says there is an attack, in reality also there was an attack. Make sense? Now if your alert says there was an attack, but in reality there was no attack, it means it is what? Okay, a lot of discussion is going on. False positive and true negative. Vignesh, as I mentioned, like, I've just set up these, alerts conditions over here, these triage alerts. So, what's happens whenever you get an alert, you cannot determine quickly that, okay, because plenty of alerts are there, right? You cannot just give it a surety that, okay, this is an incident only, isn't it? You have to check it, right? You have you have to check and handle those triage alerts. So those alerts are like this, if you talk about in triage format. So if you got an alert which says that okay, there is an incident or there is an attack, and in reality also there is an attack, it means it will be a true positive triage alert. That okay, in reality, the alert which was given to us, it was true positive. Then the next condition says that if there is an attack, alert says that I use the plus sign. That was a hint. If alert says yes, that there was an attack, but when we checked in reality, there was no attack. So it means it will be your false positive, right? Because alert gave you what? Alert gave you positive. It told you that okay, there is an attack, right? Vignesh, okay. Let's suppose you're trying to do or you're trying to authenticate in your account. Okay, right? Let's suppose Vignesh, you're trying to, or any XYZ person is trying to authenticate in his or her account. Okay, and let's suppose he or she forgot the password. So obviously he or she will be trying multiple attempts to log in, correct? They will do the multiple attempts, right? So when they are making some multiple attempts, so as per our rules, as per our conditions, does this looks like a normal, like, kind of a uh, you know password attack? Does it look like a password attack because multiple attempts are there? So, yeah. So when we got those logs, as per the logs, it will be telling that okay, this can be a password attack, right? It will be raising an alert for us. But when we checked that okay, this is coming from Vignesh account, and when I asked Vignesh that Vignesh, were you the person who was trying to access your account? And if Vignesh confirmed that yes, that he was the one who was accessing his account at this particular time, and he used multiple attempts because he forgot the password, right? And Vignesh is an employee of my company. Now, is this an attack? No. So does it make it a false positive? Because in reality there was no attack, but we got a positive alert for that. Make sense? I hope everyone got it now. Perfect. Then the next condition is if an alert says there is no attack, just we'll discuss it at the end. Like, another example, because I guess this is the best we can go for now. Okay. I will explain it again. No worries. At the end, you can ask me again for this concept. Then if I say alert says there is no attack, and when we checked in reality also there is, in reality right now, in reality there was an attack. What does it means? Alert says no attack is there, but in reality there was an attack. Karthik, good one. Okay, those who are giving false negative. Perfect. I will just raise one more condition, okay, in front of you. Alert says there is no attack, and in reality also there is no attack. What does it mean? Like, okay, perfect. Cool. Good one, guys. Good one. So first one is your true positive. Second gives you false positive. Third gives you true or false. The third will be giving you false negative, guys. Do not get confused with the signs over here. Don't get confused with these signs. It will be false negative. False negative, why? I will tell you. Alert says, exactly, Salim. The third one is the nightmare for the security people. Alert says it gave us negative, right? It gave us negative that there is no attack. Correct? Alert said that okay, it's a negative report, negative as in there is no attack going on. But in reality, there was an attack going on, right? It makes this alert what? True or false? Yes, Anudas, you can say that definitely, right? So can we say when we got a negative alert, it was not true, it makes it false negative, right? Makes sense, everyone? Your alert is saying that there is no attack. Alert is saying that there is no attack. So alert is saying negative, right? Like you have seen your armies people when they communicate on their Wi-Fi, they say negative, negative, that nothing is there. Correct, isn't it? When they say negative, it means nothing is there. Like when they say spot the target, or is there target in that particular room? The army people or your another person is saying negative. It means there is nobody over there. Right? First of all, is that clear, everyone? Right. But in case if your target is there, it means the information which was given by that person, it becomes false, right? In reality, the target was inside that room, but that person said negative. It means he told us the wrong information. It was false negative. It was the correct one. It wasn't the correct one. Make sense? And the last one, yes. The last one, fourth one, it means that if alert says there is no attack, and in reality also there is no attack, it means it gave us the true negative. The negative, which was given by alert, it was true. It was correct. So it will be a true negative. Clear, everyone? Perfect. So your L2, they will be closing the false positive. You can see over here, they'll be monitoring the open tickets, and they'll be performing the basic investigation and the remediations on that. Okay, perfect. Then if we talk about, tech, okay, people will be including your SOC manager, your CCs or your CISO, right? Your SOC analyst, incident responder. These are what these will be included into your people part, right? Then we have, you can say your, this technology. Technology will be what? Your SIM solutions. Can we say that will be a technology? Your security monitoring tools, your ticketing systems, these will be considered as your technology, right? So a thing that will be working or that works for people and the processes over there, right? So technology will be including them, and process is something which is used by different functional parts of your SOC to perform seamlessly and to perform the effective operation. Basically, your processes is a link between the people and the technology. Okay, so it will be a link between the people and the technology. So processes will be included. Different processes are there. Business processes is there. Operational processes are there. Analytical processes are there. Technology processes are there. Like your vulnerability scanning, remediation, your report preparation, your log retention, your shift scheduling, employee training, incident classification, detection and escalation, ticketing, forensics. These are what? These are processes only, right? Make sense? Everyone clear with that? Perfect. Okay. So this is the concept of people, process, and technology. All right. Which brings us to the next one, which is cyber threat. See, obviously, since we are talking about, in defensive type, we should know, like, what is your offense part as well. Because, once you understand the offense, only then you will be able to, identify your those threats in a defensive manner, or in a better way, I would say. Isn't it? So when you talk about cyber threats, what do you understand by cyber threats, guys? In a one liner? IT risk, online threats, perfect looting, which impact the business. Good one. Negative effects on organization, data loss, any vulnerability which can be exploited has a big impact. Cyber attacks, good one. Potential risks, any vulnerability which can be, yep, perfect. So can we say cyber threat is anything which can have an adversary effect on our systems, or it can damage our processes, our operations, right? Or in short, any adversary attempt to gain unauthorized access to our network, right? So obviously they'll be doing what? They'll be exploiting some vulnerability over there, and through that they'll be taking, or they'll be making an attempt to gain some unauthorized access into our organization's network, right? So they will be doing what? uh yes, so they'll be doing what? They'll be trying to infiltrate, or they'll be trying to do the data breach, steal our data, like your PIIs, your personal identifiable information, your financial information, your login credentials, etc., 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 right? So that will be done in by your cyber threats. And who carries out these cyber threats for us? Like, who does these cyber threats? The cyber threats are done by your threat adversaries, right? These are done by your threat adversaries. Make sense? Yeah, different threat adversaries, as in the source of that, you can say, you know, threats, the ones who are conducting it, basically. So different types are there. I have listed a few, like scripted is, you can say black hat hacker, yes, definitely. Professional black hats, hacktivists, hacking groups, APTs, organized crime, all of these are what? Your state sponsored ones. These are your what? These are your threat adversaries. Anyone who don't know about these things? Black hat, scripted APTs, perfect. Anyone knows what is APT? Anup, I asked it before. Exactly. Advanced persistent threat. Good one. And what does it mean? Top bad guys, government funded. Okay, the threat that doesn't quit ever. Okay, good one. Interesting. So can we say the advanced persistent threat, if you talk about APTs, in short, I will be giving just one liner, that these are the ones, those who are, you can say, to spy. Spy as in they'll be remaining, just like a spy, they'll be remaining in your network, in your system for a longer period of time. You won't be able to detect it, and they'll be, you know, uh, stealing the information from your system. Okay. Zero day attack, yes, you can say that, like, they do what? They they make the malwares, basically, I would say the custom made malwares will be there, that will be helping you to bypass, the security posture of an organization or whosoever their target is. Okay. So that's why they will won't be able to track it, just like a zero day attack. Yes, you can say that. Yeah. uh, your hackers, they do make some malwares, right? So they'll be these people, APTs, they are the entire group of expertise, I would say. A lot of funding, a lot of high level tools they do have, and according to that, they'll be doing a high level of attacking, you can say, and through that they'll be trying to get into your system, and they'll be remaining undetected for a longer period of time. All right. Yeah, no, that's definitely they are. There's an entire methodology, entire intelligence about APTs as well. The life cycle is also there. Okay. Okay. Intent, motive, goals. It simply means that what is their intentions behind that particular uh you know attack or that threat. Why they are doing that thing, basically. Okay. So that defines the intent, motive, or goals. It can be what? It can be out of greed, right? It can be out of greed. It can be out of money. Yes, monetary can be there for sure. Ransomware attack, for example, isn't it? It can be for the basis of money. Some people just want the fame, they want to spread out their name, that can be also the intention. They might be having a grudge with any organization, with any person. They want to destroy their name, their fame, or whatsoever it is, right? So they always have an intent, motive, and goal with themselves. All right. Okay, so it's just their motive we are talking about in your intent, motive, and goal. Okay. Nice. Perfect. Okay. So few network level attacks are here, like reconnaissance attack is there, network scanning, port scanning, network sniffing, DNS cache poisoning, starvation attack, denial of service. Okay. Reconnaissance attack is what? Where we doing, you can say, where will be information gathering will be done, right? We'll be gathering information about the target, and we'll try to gather their IP, their domain name, subdomains, and all that part, emails, and every that bit, so that they can strategize their entire attack over there, right? That will be part of your network level attacks. Make sense? Okay. Clear with the reconnaissance attack, everyone? So we gather the information and we try to gather more and more information so that we can narrow down and we can strategize our attacks according to it. That will be part of your reconnaissance attack. Okay. Then we do have what we have your network scanning. No, but it's not clear. Okay. Reconnaissance simply means the attacker over here, they'll be trying to discover all the possible information about their target's network information. I will try to get all the information about my target. Okay. Perfect. Network scanning, guys. What do you mean by network scanning? Port scanning, that's I've mentioned, you can include. Yeah, I totally agree. I have especially mentioned separately though. So network scanning, in short, you can say, they'll be scanning their target network, and they will try to extract information like, whether it is a live host on the network or not, what all services they are running over there, the type of packets, right? The operating systems, the operating system versions, that will be part of your network scanning. Yeah, port scanning, yeah, I have specialized, or you can say I have mentioned specifically. In port scanning, attacker will do what? They'll be trying various techniques to find out what all the open ports are there on their target, right? So, for example, we have an nmap, which can be done in order to identify what all ports are open, right? They can do that easily. Just the nmap, yeah, they can easily do that. Harish, uh, it would be better that I can show you, practically. Okay, but later. All right. Network sniffing. Just to let you know, I won't be scanning the outer ones, only the machines which I have, for myself, internal one, because otherwise it will be not a good idea. Java, just give me 5 minutes. I will be going with the break. Network sniffing, guys. In network sniffing, what do you understand by network sniffing? We'll be sniffing the data packets over there. Exactly. Right. So it's sniffing is a process of monitoring and capturing all the data packets passing through a given network using some sniffing tools. Like for example, we have Wireshark for the very best example for that, isn't it? Exactly. Right. DNS cache poisoning. Anyone having an idea what is DNS cache poisoning? TCP dump. Yeah, totally agree with that. Okay. DNS cache poisoning. Yeah. So exactly. So let's suppose there is a person. Let's suppose A is there. A is trying to access a website with the name example.com. Okay, for example, and that request will be going to your DNS resolver cache, right? DNS resolver cache, isn't it? And this is a functionality of your DNS actually. When that entry is not in your DNS resolver cache, it will be going to your an authoritative server, which is your root DNS authoritative server. So this request will be going to a root authoritative server that varies this entry of example.com. Because have you ever noticed that whenever you are trying to access a new website, it takes slight amount of time to load that website if you're opening it very for the very first time? Ever notice that? If you're trying to open that website for the very first time, and this is the reason for that, that entry is not stored in your DNS resolver cache, and when it is not stored over there, that request goes to a root DNS authoritative server. And now what happens, guys, by the time this will be replying back, your attacker over here, he'll be injecting that entry into this resolver cache. So he'll be telling you that, okay, example.com. Now, when he inject this entry in data to example.com, what will happen is, instead of going to the original website, that uh, victim will be redirected to your fake website. Okay, the one which attacker has created and redirected to. Now, your victim, when he or she entered their credentials, what will happen? This attacker can play very smart, and he or she, this attacker, will be redirecting this victim to the original website so that they will not notice that what actually happened. They will not even notice that. Okay, is that clear? That is your DNS cache poisoning, guys. Attacker will be injecting an entry in your DNS resolver cache, which will be redirecting that victim into the fake website, and he will be thinking that okay, he's in example.com, but actually he's in a fake website over there, where attacker will be harvesting his the victim's credentials basically. Okay. Then we have DHCP starvation attack. Anyone having an idea what is DHCP starvation attack? DHCP starvation attack is what? In this, basically, see, we have a DHCP server which will be leasing out the IPs to you. So whenever you are connecting with your router, for example, it has a DHCP server which will be leasing out those IPs to you. And now in DHCP starvation attack, what will happen? The attacker, he will be or she will be consuming, you can say, all the IPs from this DHCP server with a fake request. So once the attacker has consumed all the IPs from this DHCP server, now let's suppose on the a genuine person is trying to connect with the DHCP server. Will this genuine person will be able to connect with the DHCP server? No, right? Because this DHCP server, has exhausted all these IPs to this attacker, right? So there is no IP left in this DHCP server to lease out to this genuine user. So attacker, they can take an advantage of it. They can do what? They can launch their own server, which is known as a rogue server. And now, if this genuine person tries to connect with this server, which is created by attacker, then obviously attacker will be having the entire record that what this person is trying to access, right? So this is how your DHCP starvation attack can be utilized. Then we have denial of service, which is also popular with the name DOS attack. What happens in DOS attack? In DOS attack, we send lots of heavy packets to the server, and we'll be consuming, you can say, all the resources of that server, right? And then we make the server unavailable for its genuine users, right? So that will be known as your DOS attack. Okay, when you might have seen when your applications, for example, they are uh, they're not responsive, they're not responding to your request. So you can say kind of a DOS attack might have happened over there. So they will make the process so slow of the server by consuming all its resources that it will be not available for its genuine users over there. Make sense? Yeah, so it will be affecting your availability of your CIA trial. All right, perfect. Let's quickly go out for a break, and after that, we'll be okay. Just let me confirm, discuss this host level attacks, and we'll go after that. Because it is pretty much simple. Host level attacks are what? Malware, yeah, host like your system, they can be infected by what? By malware infections, right? Uh, Host level attacks can be accidental or intentional deletion of data, because we do have some insider threats in our organization. We do have some insider threats, those who are the authorized people, so they can delete the data, right? Intentionally, or if there is any accidental, that will be also host level attack, because eventually it is attacking your host only. And any unauthorized access to that system, that will be also considered as your host level attack. Okay, clear? So just to clear again, DDoS host level attacks are the ones which are attacking your host as in your system, your laptops, your mobiles. So they can be attacked by a malware. A malware can be transferred, right? Ransomware, yes, exactly, that can also be the part. And it can, in host level attacks, your accidental or intentional deletion of data is also considered host level attacks. So if any employees are deleting data accidentally, if you deleted the data, eventually it will be an attack on the host, right? Though it is accidental, but it will still be an attack. Another, intentional deletion of data. Let's suppose there is any insider threat. Insider threat is the employee who is authorized in that organization. So let's suppose that employee is having, he's a disgruntled employee. For example, he's having grudge with his manager. He's not happy with the organization. So he will be intentionally deleting the data over there. So that will be an intentional deletion of data, and eventually it will be a host level attack again, right? Then we have unauthorized access. Unauthorized access, like, as in if someone is trying to get access to your system unauthorized way, that will be again like cracking a password. Then again it will be known as your host level attacks. Is that clear now? DA virus, again malware. Okay, since we are talking about application level attacks, right? So before I go ahead on these 5 points, very first thing I just wanted to mention is OWASP. Anyone heard about it? Right? Open Web Application Security Project. What it does, like it's a non-profit organization. All right, guys. So you can say, like after every 3 to 4 years of a gap, okay, they list out the top 10 attacks which have been done and which might be having the most impact around the world. Okay, most done having most impact in the around the world, you can say. So after every generally 3 to 4 years, so like previously there was 2013, 2010, before that was also there 2017. We were expecting on 2020, but someone hit a bat. So now recently, a couple of months back, we got OWASP top 20 or top 10 for 2021 as well. So they list out the top 10 attacks, okay, which are done. So injection is one of them. It has been there for a couple of years. In 2013 and 17, it has been on the top most, right? So SQL injection is one of them. Command line injection, different injection attacks are there. So SQL injection is one of them. So what happens in a SQL injection? Do you know that? It interacts with whom? It interacts with your database, right? Your DB. So through application, yes, absolutely. So you might have seen that we have a username and password section, right? These are your input fields. So attackers, they'll be using these input fields in order to interact with the database and try to manipulate it and try to extract the information out of it. Okay, Justin, it can be any application. Generally, they are designed for the web app only. If we talk about mobile application, true, indeed, like we have a separate list of mobile application attacks. Okay, so when you're interacting with an application, it is done through your web only, isn't it? But a separate list of applications are also there, but they have a general method, right? So these are the general methods which are applied on them. Basically, if you're using in your mobile or in your system, that too. So SQL injection, you'll be injecting some SQL queries over there. You can say, okay, we'll be injecting some queries over here, and these queries will be interacting with the database in order to manipulate it, and in order to get the information out of it. All right, is that clear? Justin, let's hold that question for the last. Okay. Meanwhile, everyone clear with the SQL injection? Perfect. Then we have cross-site scripting. Cross-site scripting is a browser-based attack, guys. It's a XSS attack. It is also known as XSS. This is basically totally based on a scripting base, you can say. So, for example, like just to give an example, uh, something if I write a script over here, if I click on go, again, the input field, right? Can you see it gave me a pop-up which says enter the username? If I write a username like Sayam and hit OK, it is asking me to enter the password. The main thing to be noticed over here is you can see it is being generated from Testfire only, which is the website name. So any random person, he or she will be thinking that it is being generated from a website only, right? So the owner of this website, they are generating these pop-ups. So this is for those who are not aware about these things. So if I write again my password as well, for example, Sayam again, if I click on OK, these credentials will be harvested to whom? These credentials will be harvested to your attacker, right? So let's suppose if I save my script in a server, Let's suppose we all are using Facebook. If Facebook is vulnerable to cross-site scripting, I will be saving my script into the server of Facebook, and now I'll be showing these pop-ups to each and everyone who is accessing Facebook at that time. And once they see the pop-up, they might be thinking, okay, this is from Facebook original website, and that might be from survey issues or survey reasons. Like, I will manipulate, right? I will try to convey that way only. My attack, I will strategize accordingly. And as soon as you will be, I'll be gaining your trust. As soon as you think that it is coming from Facebook and you entered your credentials, those credentials will be harvested to me, right? So this is one way to do that attack. Satrajit, no, 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 this is not social engineering. Once more, like, sign in part, as I was saying. Yeah, Justin, I am saving my script on the server. You can say I'm storing my one script on the server. One example of SQL injection, just showing you over here. Okay, just remember this hyphen, hyphen, space, hyphen in this single quote. Did it just me log? Did it just logged me in, and that was an admin user, right? Isn't it? And does these look like a username and a password? Because in password also I implemented the same thing. Do they look like a genuine username or password? No, right? But still, so this is a form of a SQL injection. Okay. So if we talk about IOC, in, like, whenever you're trying to see what all the IOCs are there, because in regarding a web application one, it's pretty much tough to determine them. So if you talk about in terms of them, these, whenever you find out in your logs these hyphen, hyphen, space, hyphen, or these single quotes, you can consider that this might be a kind of a SQL injection attack. Okay. For XSS, again the script tags will be there. Okay. Number, yeah, you can use this website. Just make sure it is testfire at the domain name. All right. If you want the link, I can share the link with you guys. You can perform your web application based attack over here. Okay, I have shared it with you. Clear? So this is cross-site scripting. CSRF is a cross-site request forgery. Cross-site request forgery is something like, suppose, you know what attackers were doing. I'll be provide. Actually, it has two conditions. First of all, it has the condition that victim should be online. Victim should be online, as in your victim should carry out the attack. And another condition is, sorry, victim should be online means your victim should be authenticated. First of all, he should logged in into the particular application. And another condition is that victim should carry the attack. Okay, these are the two primary condition of cross-site request forgery. So what happens in this, guys, is that this was very popular for financial transaction, basically. So what happens, let's suppose I, being an attacker, I'll be forging a URL to you guys, and in that URL I'll be writing, will be including some scripts and tags along with it. Okay, now what will happen when I give that URL or that link to you, and as soon as you click on that URL, so let's suppose we have Karthik. Let's take in, pick up a volunteer. Let's suppose Karthik is there. Karthik and I are having an account in a bank. Okay, you can name it any bank. For example, I'm naming it HDFC Bank, for example. So we both are having an account in HDFC Bank. As per my first condition, that victim should be online. Karthik has logged into his HDFC account. That is my first condition. He logged in into his HDFC account. Now the second condition says that he should carry out the attack. So I force the URL to Karthik by email or anything, and as soon as Karthik click on that URL, he is carrying out the attack for me. So as soon as he click on that URL, what will happen? He will be doing the transaction from his account in HDFC to my account. Make sense? So this was happening in that. Okay. If it's not clear for you, let me give you an idea. I want everyone to open your, browser. Open your browser, sign into your Gmail account, and once you have signed into your Gmail account, keep logged over there, okay? And click on this link which I have pasted over here in the chat. Vignesh, we are making a genuine user to carry the attack. That attack, that scripts, those things will be listed in this particular URL. Okay, once you click on this link, let me know what happens. Sai, just click on that link. It will automatically work on your browser. Don't worry. If you're pasting it, that is also fine. Harish, exactly. It logged you out from your account, right? So see, getting the point. My link logged you out of your account. So can I make the similar link so that if you're logged into your SDFC account, can I make a link through which you can do the transaction into my account? Getting my point? I hope that makes sense now, everyone. For CSRF, cross-site request forgery. Perfect. Then we have broken access control. Okay. Admin, I forgot the name. Anything you can just raise this query later and we'll discuss about it. No worries. Okay. Vignesh, phishing. Harish, no, you won't face any problem. Don't worry, it is pretty much genuine link which I have provided to you, so don't worry about it. Okay. Broken access control, which I just showed you, like if you have a weak password authentication, if I can guess your password attack, that can be part of your broken access control. That when I did that SQL injection, I okay, broken access control. My bad. Broken access control. Okay. See, let's suppose we all are in a Instagram, we all are accessing Instagram. So let's suppose taking an example of Harish now. Now tell me if Harish is an Instagram user, he's a normal user. So can he delete another user's account? Can he delete another user from Instagram? No, right? If I talk about admin, can admin do that? Admin of Instagram? Okay, hello everyone. Can you hear me? Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. So as I was saying, admin can delete it easily, right? He can delete any user over there. So what I'm trying to say is if Harish is able to delete a user in Instagram, it will be under your broken access control if he's having those access controls. So it means it is a vulnerability of broken access control that Harish can, switch and he can make his privilege as an admin and he can delete another user or he can perform another access. He can have access to another things. Make sense? Okay. Then last is the security misconfiguration. Security misconfiguration is just like if you are having a misconfiguration over there, for example, uh, your router. When you buy a router, have you ever seen on the back side of your router, admin is written over there as your username and password, right? By default. So when you're keeping your router as that only, as your admin only, so attacker can easily use that, isn't it? Like basically, in short, what I'm trying to say is, if your configuration of your systems are not properly done, anyone can take an advantage of that. Make sense? I have seen shown this a lot though. For example, in this one, if I click on this link, just for a mere example, I'm just trying to open a link. Just give me a second. So can you see we are accessing a live camera over here? There's something somewhere from Germany, if I'm not wrong. There's a university over there. Not exactly Germany. I forgot the location. But this is the the live camera which we are able to access. So can we say if this there's a security misconfiguration, we are able to access the entire thing over there? Can you see that? You're able to see the live camera footage, isn't it? Yeah, Java, I know it will be logging you off. Makes sense, guys. This is which will be included into your security misconfiguration. Okay, clear? Okay. Then we have IOC. As we have mentioned before, like IOC is what? Indicator of compromise, right? Correct. So anyone, what do you understand by IOC again? Just like a quick one-line definition. So these are what? These are the clues, or you can say, the evidences or the pieces of a forensic data that is found on your network or your operating system of an organization that will be indicating to a potential intrusion or any malicious activity in organization's infrastructure. So it's kind of a good source of information about the threats, that serve as a data point in the incident triage process later, right? So SOC analysts, they are, asked to, you can say, or they need to perform continuous monitoring of these IOCs to effectively and efficiently detect and respond to the evolving cyber threats out there. Okay, so it will be helping your SOC analyst in detecting the data breaches, the malware intrusion attempts, or other threat activities out there. Right, it will be assisting your SOC analyst in knowing what happened about the attack. It will be helping to improve the response time as well as to upgrade the detection rate of the threats over there. Right, clear? So this will be your IOC basically. Okay. So if you talk about examples, as I mentioned, it is very difficult to detect web application based attacks IOC as they are stealthy in nature. Okay, and also attackers try to cover their tracks, right? And they remain undetected for maximum exploitation. So you need to monitor the IOCs to detect web application incidents more quickly. So as I mentioned, for SQL injection, that hyphen hyphen colon script tags, these will be IOC. Or if there is any unavailability of the website, web service or application, again IOC, right? Leakage of sensitive data, IOC, right? Web page defacement, someone changed the website entire structure, IOC, right? Frequently rebooting of a server, IOC, right? Database logs, they are showing multiple errors, for example, within a short period of time, again IOC. Make sense? Redirection to URLs to incorrect sites, IOC, right? Web page defacement, as I mentioned, these are also part of your IOCs only. Clear? It can be anywhere, IN, you know, it's IOC is just general term. If everything goes out of the pattern, they can be indicated to your IOCs, okay, which looks suspicious to you. Clear? Okay. Then we do have some hacking methodology. Hacking methodology here is of 5 steps. You can say reconnaissance, scanning, gaining access, maintaining access, and covering the access. Reconnaissance, as I mentioned, it is to information gathering. where we narrow down our search and gather more and more information about the target. Okay, because if I say like attack uh, infosec train, so you won't be able to do it, right? First of all, you have to gather the information about infosec train, isn't it? Right? So that will be part of your reconnaissance. Then scanning is like to get the more detailed information like your open ports, the services which are running over there, and all that part. I will show you that tomorrow, don't worry. Then gaining access means when I get the access into my target system. Okay, when I got the unauthorized access, or you can say when I get the access into the target. Okay, and when I'm able to enter into the system, for example, that will be a gaining access. Maintain access, it means to remain into that particular network, into that server or into that system for a longer period of time, so that I can perform the all the activities which I want to, or to achieve all the goals like data breach, steal the data out of it. That will be a maintaining access. The last one is a covering access. Covering access means removing traces, isn't it? So as the attacker, obviously you will want to remove all your traces from it, right? Got an idea about these five? Reconnaissance, scanning, gaining access, maintain access, and covering access. Perfect. Scanning, when we play out with the logs tomorrow, I will for sure show you scanning a bit more in detail. Okay. So we'll do about a bit scanning, as well as we'll see those logs in your Wireshark as well. Shimpa Seti, exactly. So same. Pen tester also, kind of a white hat hacker, right? Okay. So reconnaissance, it means gather the information about the target. Scanning means uh, scanning whether the ports are open, what all the services are there running on that particular target, about that. Gaining access, get into the system, get the access into it. Like for example, I got the access into Vignesh system, right? Unauthorized access. And I will maintain my access over there. I will try to remain undetected so that I can steal the information out of Vignesh's computer or system, and then I will remove all the traces from it in your covering access. Make sense? Perfect. Okay. Regarding logs, we'll cover tomorrow. Okay, a bit more in terms of playing with the logs. But for now, I will be just showing you a bit into your Splunk. Excited for that? Perfect. At least you should have an idea what is Splunk looks like, or the SIM tools looks like. Okay, just give me a second. Okay, so this is your dashboard, how it looks like. Okay, I can provide you a link from where you can download this Splunk for yourself, and you can install in your you know uh, Windows and every that bit. But for that, I will always suggest you guys to have a VMware, and that VMware first install your Windows 10, and then go with the Splunk. Okay, Justin, for that you have to connect for a letter N with me, post 10, I guess. And but I will for sure provide those details to you guys. Okay. Okay. See, uh, Splunk, it is an enterprise module. You can say, limited. You can say space is given. Like for example, on a day, I can only upload 500 MB of a data, not more than that. Okay. So if you talk about Splunk, it's your SIM tool where all the logs are being generated. We can say collected, and then we can provide some correlation rule, a search tool. On the basis of that, we can, you know, create an alert over there. Okay. So if you talk about like you can see add data, add a forward data to your Splunk. So you can see a lot of options are over here, like upload, monitor, and forward. Can you see that? Upload, monitor, and forward. right? So upload, I can upload a file from my computer and I can, check it out or all the logs in that particular file. So if I create a say, if I save a file of all the logs, I can upload it and I can analyze them over here as well. So it can include all your, you can say, zip files and your CSV files, like your Excel sheet. Basically you can directly upload it. Then we have a monitor part where we, do the real time analysis, you can say. So it will be scanning your files and you can analyze your files and ports on this Splunk platform instance, like HTTP port, TCP, UDP, all that scripts and all that can be done in your monitor part. Whereas on there's a forward data for from a Splunk forwarder, as I mentioned. Like if you have a data source, we put up a forwarder over there, and that from that forwarder, the agent will be throwing those logs into my SIM tools. Okay, so that happens in your real-time monitoring. So since we cannot do the real-time monitoring over here, so we'll try to go with the first of all your upload to give you an analysis of the entire Splunk. So it is asking me to select a file. You can see the maximum file upload size is 500 MB and more than that for your enterprise. I select a file. I have a tutorial data over here. I will click on open. Okay. It will show you previous not supported for this archive file, but it is fine. Don't worry. You go up, click on next, go for the input settings. Everything is fine for me. You can change the host field value. Host field value is basically your, you can see, the PC name. So my PC name is Infosec PC. That's pretty much fine. Indexing, if you want to, you can give it. By default, it's going for the main one. Soumya, it will be on the add data. Add data. Okay. Then it will be giving a review. Everything is fine for now for me. Okay. Automatic infosec p indexing default. By default, it is your main. Then uploaded a file. Click on submit. As soon as click on submit, it will be uploading that file for you. And then you do what? You start searching. As soon as you click on start searching, you will notice the logs are over here of that file. Can you see everyone? Right. So over here, you can see this is your search bar. Can you see source? You remember the correlation part which I was talking about on the last session? Error logon more than 4 from the same user within 1 hour. So you can put up those, over here. So this is your SPL where we can write your Splunk, uh, language basically. So in new search, this is basically you can your search can contain words, phrases, field, value pairs, your wildcards as well. You can see wildcards are also included, right? So they can also be included in your search. So on the basis of that search, it will be yes, Vasudev, exactly. So on the basis of that, it will be giving you out all the entire results on this below section of this tool. Okay, it will be including your boolean operators like your and, or, not, every that bit. Okay, then you can see. Can you see this all time section? Where is it? Just a second. Yeah, this all time. So this is what this this will be giving a time frame. Like choose, you can choose a smaller time range to speed up your search, and now your search results over here. Like if you want to see the all time logs, they'll be listed out in front of you. If you want to see the logs of today, it will be giving you last 15 minutes, it will be giving you 30-second window, it will be giving you all those logs from here in your all time section. Okay, then if you talk about logs over here. Okay, so if I highlight a portion like this. Okay, so what I can do, when I click on this particular portion now, I can add this portion on a search. Yes, Stanley, it is. I can either when I click on this infosec PC, for example, right, I highlighted a portion of an event and I clicked on it to include or exclude it from the search. Can you see that? It is also giving me remove from search. So on the search bar, which is on the top left, it was including our infosec PC as a host. Remember over here, isn't it? Right? So I can do what? Either I can just, if I click on it, I can include it over there and I can remove it from there. Make sense? So on the basis of that, I can also do my search, doesn't it? Now, interesting thing. Okay. Muhammad Asim, anything that has occurred, that is known as the event. Okay. Event doesn't mean it's an incident. So logs are generated when an event has occurred, isn't it? Your logs are only generated when your events are generated, isn't it? Yes or no? So once an event had happened, only then we can create a log. So that's why. On the left hand side, yes, I'm just giving a brief idea of this entire portal of your Splunk. On the left hand side, guys, can you see this entire field, this field sidebar from top to bottom? Interesting fields, Splunk, refer, product, widget for sure. Why not? I will do that. Correct. So this sidebar, Anup does exactly by default, it has been done over there, but you can always change it. Okay. So this sidebar shows fields that the search has automatically extracted from your events. So can you see events are here? So entire these events are containing these searches. So these fields are included in your this entire events which are listed right in front of you. Okay, makes sense? So all these events which are listed on this center position, top to bottom, from these are the interesting fields which has been extracted out automatically. So you can add your own field, you can delete your own field, whatever you want, you can do that. Anudas, yes, definitely they get the dashboard according to themselves. Yes, definitely they do get that. They do get that. Okay, like if you click over here, anyone, you know, then you can see, it will be giving what this field summary shows the distribution of the entire field basically. Okay, all the field values will be listed over here, like like this. Okay, so you can even add it to your search or use the report links to create a visualization for that. You can do that. Okay, Satrajit, okay, why not? So basically, first of all, let's get an idea. Okay, we'll have to do that. I'll give you an idea of that. Okay, first of all, is it clear over here? Is this clear? First of all, everyone. So far, it's clear about the dashboard. Perfect. Now, see, uh, interesting thing. Mm, just a second. Page is not responding properly. Just a second. Okay. Okay. For example, how many hosts are there? How many sources have been included? And how many source type are there? They include that. Like one host, InfoSec PC, remember? That represent the count, the amount of number of them. Jawar, it is a SIM. Splunk is a SIM tool. Okay. And let's suppose AC account ID 100 plus. It means in this entire event list, you can see, plenty of events are 329592. These many events are there. Yeah. So out of these, 329,592 events, account ID has been listed to 100 plus events out of these 329,592. Okay, Shipa Seti, is that clear? So out of these events, account ID has been listed out in 100 plus events. So you can click on account ID, it will be filtering out those events for you in which account ID has been mentioned. So Splunk, the SIM tool automatically does what? It will be automatically gathering those interesting fields for you. You can add your own, that is by your choice. Jawahar, exactly, exactly. That's what I said on the initial part. Remember? Okay. Cool. One more thing. Like, okay. For suppose, let's suppose guys, if I click on this, log, for example, if I select this log or this event, what I can do, I can also create an alert for that. You can say save as either report or alert, for example, right? If I click on alert, can you see it is giving me a lot of options over here? I can give it a title, I can give it a description, I can make it a permissions, private or shared in app with others. I can give it an alert type, whether scheduled or real time, run every week, or on the basis of like run every day, every week, every month, every hour, all that part, and expires after 24 hours or not, right? Conditions and triggering once or for every time, and triggered actions like you can say add actions like add to trigger events. For example, I can run a script, I can invoke a custom script as well. I can send log event to Splunk receiver on the endpoint devices. So let's suppose I click on triggered alert. So severity medium, low, high, critical. I mentioned it critical, and click on save. So now what will happen whenever this activity will happen again, or this event will generate it again? What will happen? We will get an, what will we get? Alert for that. Remember? Perfect. Exactly. So this is how you create an alert, and then you send this alert. We have the entire ticket system, and then we'll be sending it to your L1 analyst. Okay. You can say authority, it can be also part of L1. Yes, definitely. Okay. So view an alert. I've already made some few errors, but this is one of them. The one which we just created. So whenever this, event will occur, whenever this activity will happen, we'll get our alert on the basis of that. And these alerts are, shown to your L1s. The other part describe, different jobs, and that dashboard they'll be just seeing the alerts and they'll be inspecting those IPs out of it, or whatever the alert is all about. Sorry about it. Cool. Now someone asked me to conclude whether it can be an incident or not, right? How we can check. So I'll just give you an idea to how it may look like. So for example, let's suppose fail. I'll be using a wildcard. You can see a lot of options are there, right? Failed, failed, failed column, faileth, falling, failings, fails, multiple are there. I'll just put up a wildcard, and let's suppose password. Let's see if we have any failure password regarding this in our logs. Okay. Can we see that failed password logs are generated over here about 99,763? Can we see that? Can you see the logs? So can we say a lot of attempts are there for SSH, secure shell port? Can you see on the right hand side, the SSH one? Again on SSH, plenty of them are for your SSH basis. So can we say, and just look at the time frame as well. It's pretty much quick. So with this, what can you include? What can you conclude? Tell me. Mohammad Abuzar, it does, but yeah, sample won't be able to cover in this particular sessions. Yes. Password attack, brute force, dictionary, that can be right. isn't it, guys? You can see the time frame. Within that time frame, lot of SSH attempts are there for the password base, right? So with this, can we conclude that this might be an attack? Exactly, right? From the same IP, that too from the same IP, wasn't it? Satrajit, when you open the logs, you can just, for that you have to know about the filters. If you, mention the filters, you will be able to see those IPs as well. So don't worry about it. On the basis of the IPs also, you can just filter out the entire thing over here. That's pretty much simple. Okay. So you can see IPs from 192.8.7.74.23. That is also listed, isn't it? So yeah, so entire details are also listed out here in front of you. So according to this, you can identify, okay, this might be an, someone is trying to attack. So you can raise an alert for that. Make sense? So this is how you can write those correlation rules, and according to that, you'll be finding out the entire logs, and then you can create a alert out of it. Make sense, everyone? Perfect. Tomorrow, I'll be, what we'll be doing, we'll be playing around with logs more. Okay. Like I'll be showing you in Wireshark how to determine things as well, because Wireshark is also one of the pretty cool utility which is out there, which is used by our analysts as well in order to determine an incident is there or not. Okay. Ted, you have to learn about them.